I want you to memorize these two words. They will reshape your perspective when the ground underneath your feet starts to move. They'll keep you from cussing out your neighbor, and they'll help you not to hurt somebody. They are these two words, but God. They are the two words to rest your life upon. In Genesis chapter 50, verse 20, Joseph uses these two words to summarize the conclusion of his theology across the sorrow of his personal misery. After the betrayal by his brothers and the lying of his boss's wife, this ex-convict Joseph lands second in command in the most powerful kingdom of the then known world. It is a true rags to riches story, with the unseen hand of God at every stop. His brothers meant their actions for evil, but God used them, meant them for his good. It is from this narrative that you and I see the conclusion of the book of Genesis. But it is also where you and I come to learn that there is purpose in our pain and a larger objective in our agony. In a world beset by troubles, maladies, and injustices, we learn from Joseph that life is sometimes best interpreted through the rear-view mirror of providence. There are two beautiful imageries that unfold this mystery. Once, when I was a young kid, my grandmother was sewing a design into some socks. I sat down at her feet looking up at what she was sewing. The endless, tangled, non-matching colors of the thread prompted me to complain that none of this, Grandma, makes any sense. It doesn't go together. I won't forget how she replied to me as it preaches today. Charlie, you're looking at what I'm doing from the bottom up. Stand up and come see it from the top down. I was flying home from New York back to Chicago once. We were flying west over Lake Michigan, headed for O'Hare Airport, when the pilot decided to turn the plane around. Now, around this time, none of us were playing with planes that seemed to be going in the wrong direction. He quickly turned the plane back, got us in position, and landed. On the way off the plane, I went to the cockpit and I said, Mr. Pilot, I noticed that you turned the plane back around, caused us to go east when we should have been going west. He looked at me and said, Mr. Passenger, there were some things happening that you did not know, traffic that got in our way. But not to worry, I was in touch with the tower. Friends, so it is with life. We live through events that seem tangled and meaningless, and we're tempted to despair. It's because we're looking at life from the bottom up, when God invites us to see from his providential perspective, from the top down. And these events do not seem singularly painful all by themselves when we're able to catch them from the redemptive view of God's perspective. God is able to navigate traffic. God is able to get us through turbulence. And God is able to work in things that we cannot see, a pattern from above that causes his providence to shine through. You can be certain that God allows, even arranges, some stinging circumstances in your life as part of the fulfillment of his great purposes for your life. This is how Joseph works. And in verse 19 of Genesis chapter 20, but Joseph said to them, do not be afraid. Am I in the place of God? You meant evil against me, but God meant it for my good, to bring about the present result, the survival of many people. This passage and a proper application of it depends on an understanding of what comes and goes before it. On the one hand, there is a dreadful, sinful reality. Joseph has been sinned against. And this, friend, is why you and I should be slow to judge people. We do not always know why people land in the circumstances that they do. Sometimes people have been sinned against. On the other hand, there is an aspect of the greatness of God that overcomes his personal anguish. Joseph is able to see God at work in the rearview mirror of life, ordering circumstances. Notice now that when you get to Genesis chapter 36, the narrative of Esau comes to the fore and falls off. After chapter 36, we don't get much about Esau thereafter. But at Genesis chapter 37, the Bible, Genesis, takes its last strategic turn, gives us the genealogical registration of Jacob. Now, these are the sons of Jacob, now Joseph. That's striking because the next 13 chapters or so are primarily about Joseph's life. You can feel the winds of providence blowing in and through Joseph's life, favored by his father, the desire of his mother, given a coat of many colors, a dreamer. And yet Joseph suffers 3 forms of abuse from those who should have loved him, from those who should have honored him, and from those who should have remembered him. It's the hatred of his brothers, their jealousy of him, that prompted them to sell him into slavery. There, Joseph is picked up by some Midianite traders and put on a separate path for life. But God blesses him and elevates him and uses him. Oh, how the providence of God positions us. Then the cruelty of his boss's trophy wife, who longs for him, lusts for him, and wants him. You can feel the integrity of Joseph in upper level management. I mean, this is a time where many of us would say there's enough reason here, Joseph, for you to get some personal gratification after all the hell you've been through. But Joseph refuses to do it. Oh, how the providence of God prepares us. Then when he's wrongfully incarcerated, I know some people who've suffered from that, thrown into a dungeon for something they did not do. Joseph sits there with the baker and the butler. He interprets their dreams. And he says to the butler, when you get restored to your position, remember, please, to tell the king about me. Somebody needs to remember me. But as soon as the butler gets there, he quickly forgets Joseph. But the Lord remembers Joseph. And right when the king, when Pharaoh has trouble with dreams, the butler remembers, oh, there's a young man I met in the jail who can help. Oh, how the providence of God promotes us. And then the famine strikes, the great famine of Egypt that seems to destroy that Mesopotamian metropolis. Joseph puts in place a sophisticated plan where they store grain. And now Joseph's brothers have to come and buy grain for their own survival, because God has a way of bringing people who have done you wrong to you to get help from you. And when his brothers show up to get help from him, Joseph tests their sincerity. And at a moment when he can take it no more, when his emotions leap abroad, Joseph weeps aloud. He unveils his identity. He cries until there is no more strength in him to weep. And then he gives his brothers those 2 words that changes the rest of human history. They say, Joseph, don't do us any harm. We didn't know any better. Our father wants you to preserve us. And Joseph says, you still don't get it. You meant it for evil, but God meant it for my good. That's right. This is not only a forceful testimony. It needs to be your affirmation in the face of hurt, hate, disappointment, intended and unintended grief. You need to be able to see that God is clearly at work, even in the evil that is done against you. God may not arrange evil, but he can rearrange evil so that he uses it for your benefit. And hear now what Joseph says to his brothers. I need y'all to interpret what happened to me, not from the lens of your own guilt, but from the grace of God's providence. You meant it for evil, but God. Can you say those 2 words? Can you apply them to your own life? When your body starts to act strange, when aging takes over and you feel like it's not working out for your good, say these 2 words, but God. When your money is funny and your change is strange and life isn't fair, but God. When friends get few and the vocation gets weird and your profession shifts, but God. Homes foreclose, things change, possessions get stolen, but God. And you might think that this is just some fancy preacher talk. Well, I want to tell you it's not, because Joseph saves Judah's life. Of all the brothers who needed to live, I think when you read the gospel of Jesus Christ, you'd agree with me that Judah needed to live. Because from Judah comes a lion who will lay down his life for all of humanity. Joseph's betrayal, his stint in Potiphar's house, his time in jail, and his leadership in the kingdom helped to preserve the line from which Jesus would come. That's right, and the greatest evil that had ever been done in mankind, when they put nails in his hands, and a spike through his feet, and a spear in his side, and a crown of thorns upon his head, and he died. Yes, he died. He died till death died. When that evil came through, God used it for our good. And so you can shout with me, oh, how I love Jesus, because he first loved me. There are two words you need to be able to have to view life from: but God.